So my earliest memories of wanting to be an artist were as far back as I can remember. And anytime my parents would take me somewhere to a meeting or a gathering or a church service, they always brought along paper and pencil, and then I would lay underneath the chairs that they were sitting in usually and just draw the whole time. So I owe a lot of that beginning out as an artist to them, and just encouraging that and always providing the materials I needed to do that and the space that I needed to do that. And then as I got older, my two favorite things were math and art. And I think a lot of parents would have probably pushed the math direction and said, study math, become an accountant, do something like that. A little more of a direct and secure career path, but they encouraged me to do both and do what I wanted. And so that helped me to be able to find a career that does do both. And so that's how I got where I am today. So college was my first experience of really studying art and having to work around the clock at art. You know, I took art classes in high school, and my parents always would sign me up for outside art classes to do on the side, but then I got to college and it was just a whole different game. You know, the staying up all night in the studio trying to finish all of your assignments, and then I also just got exposed to a lot of different mediums. Before that, it was mostly just drawing, a little bit of painting, a little bit of photography, but major focus on drawing. And so I got to college, and by force, because I was an art education major, I had to do all the different mediums, at least one class in each medium: ceramics, printmaking, painting, drawing, everything you can imagine. So I got to try a lot of new things, and that's when I really got more into painting, which has become more of my focus as an adult artist, is with the paint. And that's been in a variety of forms, through more of a mixed media and using assemblage and being collaborative, but using paint in all of it, and doing larger sized paintings like murals, and now where I am today, working in a very smaller size, much less messy. There's no spray paint anymore. There's no, toxic glues and things like that. It's just, my Sharpie markers and my watercolor paints in a small spiral bound journal. Yeah, as I kind of mentioned, as a young adult artist, I did a lot of collaborative work with other artists, and I did a lot of things on a large scale. One of my long-going and favorite projects was with another artist named Kara Hendershot, and we called our collaborative Happy Accidents. And so we had this giant piece it all started with a giant piece of plywood, and we just had this sitting in the garage, and we had a bunch of cans of spray paint, and we were bored and looking for something to do. So we thought, well, let's see what we can make out of this. And so we started spray painting it, and just organically decided that when we are painting this, we're just going to enjoy it. We're not going to stop and critique ourselves or critique each other. If we make a mistake, we incorporate it, and we wanted it to be fun, and we were trying to get away from that highbrow, like overly serious, always having to be a certain way as an artist, and just to enjoy being an artist. And so it turned into this years-long project that we started incorporating other materials and doing a lot of, we were using a lot of spray paint, a lot of assemblage, like gluing on chunks of things that we found at this resale shop called Axeman, where they just sell bizarro, like doll parts and gear parts, and we would find fun things and glue them on there. So for a long time, that's kind of how I worked. And even when I was working not collaboratively, that was still my style. I liked spray paint, and then I liked layering that with a lot of collage and stencil, and then acrylic painting you know, and just layering things and putting it all together, and usually in like a medium size when I was by myself. But then I had children, and I felt, without realizing it, that I had to keep creating the way I had created. So it became very impossible for me. You know, there's no like time or space for giant plywood in the living room when there is a 1-year-old crawling around putting everything in his mouth, you know. And working on a large scale also just requires more time, you know. I mean, you're covering more space, it takes longer sometimes. And then also just the toxic materials that I probably shouldn't have been working with myself, I no longer was comfortable having those with little ones around. So for a long time, I didn't make a lot of artwork that was my own. I was teaching, and so I would create samples for classes, but that was about it as far as my artwork. And it was only about a year and a half ago now that I just had this realization that who I am as an artist can change and evolve over time. And sometimes like my external environment is going to cause those changes, and that's okay. And so I let go of all of my ideas of what my artwork needed to look like. And that's when I thought, okay, well, what do I really love that I can still work with? And Sharpies. I know it's weird, but I love Sharpies. And I've always had Sharpies, and that was even, you know, pre-children, part of my artwork. We would always draw things in Sharpies in our collaborative work and in my individual work. So I picked up on the Sharpie thing, and I thought, okay, I need to do smaller, and if everything was bound together, it would be better. So I grabbed a spiral bound watercolor journal that was just like a 5x7 size. And then I started with the Sharpie and wanted to add paint, but you know, acrylic paint is messy and permanent and takes longer to dry. So that's how I ended up with the watercolor. So it was all just, you know, really from necessity that all of this changed, but I found a new medium, and then with that, a little bit of a new style to go with it. So I've been out of practice for a while, and I really felt like I needed to give myself a challenge to make the change and to not just kind of dabble and put it aside again. So I challenged myself to try to make one painting per week. And in that size and that medium, I felt like that was reasonable. I also made that challenge for myself, knowing that there's going to be weeks where I don't make a whole painting, and that's okay. And so I did let go of that. So there would be weeks where maybe I only got the drawing and the Sharpie part done. And then the next week, maybe I was able to finish that one with paint, or sometimes I would draw one and just not really be moved to paint it. So I move on to a new one and do a whole new one and a few new ones, and then come back later and paint it. And so there are a bunch still in the notebook too that I just never really, they might get finished later, or they might have just been exercises that I won't finish. So since this whole medium change and style change kind of was born from being a mother, I was thinking a lot about being a mother. And for me, there were a lot of surprises about motherhood. And for a long time as a young mother, I thought I was doing something wrong because it wasn't like the movies and the TV. And I know that life's not like movies and TV, but I just felt like this doesn't seem like what it's supposed to be. And after so much time of being concerned that I was doing something wrong, finally it's like you start to talk to other mothers and realize that you have so many shared experiences, and that they also felt like they were doing something wrong. You know, why am I not just constantly joyed at having this little bundle of joy running around, you know? And so I just felt like, oh my gosh, if I had known this so much earlier, I could have saved myself so much worry and probably enjoyed it more. So part of my purpose in painting about my experience was just to share that with other mothers. And I wanted to share the joys of motherhood. I mean, I love bath time. I love story time at night. you know, and those are just things that in the midst of a terrible day will bring me joy. But there are also times when I was crying in the shower at the end of a day, because I hadn't had a shower in maybe 4 days. And because while I was trying to shower, the baby in the next room is screaming and crying. And, you know, I mean, it's both. It's hard, it's joyful, and it's everything in between. And sometimes just monotonous, not hard, not joyful, but repetitive. So I wanted to share those experiences just for the purpose of this is what it was like for me, and then open up that door for other moms to also share this is what it was like for me, because every mom's experience is going to be different. But then, like I said, there were so many shared experiences that I think are valuable for us to know about each other. So this exhibit is my experience. It's not obviously all of my experience. It's an ongoing project that I will continue to add to. But I didn't want to just share one side of the story of what it's like to be a mother, because since it is different for everyone, I wanted to have opportunities for other mothers to then share what it was like for them. So either through drawings, paintings, poetry, and or just descriptive paragraph, you know, just sharing some of those stories so that it can become more of an interaction and an open dialogue about what people have been through, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as mothers. And just so that it doesn't seem like this is what it's like to be a mother. This is really what it was like for Summer Scharringhausen to be a mother. But yeah, and looking for those overlaps and those differences, and just the beauty and the diversity of the motherhood experience. So words are hard for me, but titles are necessary. So what I did was, with the title of the exhibition being My Motherhood Is blank, I tried to kind of fill in the blank with each title. And just, I tried to stick to, for the smaller pieces, maybe one word that could finish that sentence, and kind of show the diversity of how many words can describe one experience, you know. And then for the larger pieces, I did 3 words because I like math. And so I put a numbers thing to it, you know, 1 word for small pieces, 3 words for big pieces. But yeah, but really that's what those words are. They're supposed to just finish that sentence of describing what my experience was like. The 3 larger pieces in the exhibit, those kind of came out of a fun, unexpected turn. So I was doing, like I said, I had the spiral bound watercolor journal, and I was trying to do 1 a week or more or less, you know, but in the 5x7 size. And then when COVID hit, and I'm the director of education for another arts organization, all of a sudden we had to cancel our classes, and I started teaching on Zoom, just free classes for people to take in the meantime. And so I was teaching on image harvesting and using, like, finding an image you have created that you really enjoy and finding ways to reuse that image again and again in other images, and creating repetition and variation and things like that. And so I took one of my images that I had made for the exhibition in the 5x7 size, and I showed them how I could trace my own image and repeat it to create a larger image. And so I did that as part of a class, and then we finished and I looked at it and I just thought, well, I like this. I should take my own advice. So, and then I also just started thinking about a few larger pieces would just give a little more variety to the exhibition. And so I ran with it, and I did 4 pieces in the larger size. I have 3 that are completely finished in the exhibition, but that's where those came from. And so it was just, again, just something that came out of a necessity and turned into a new direction for my series.